Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers Inspiration. I'm your host, Harriet Cole. So very honored to be with you today. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone. Oh, I hope that you are filled with joy and happiness and peace and the sense of potential as we begin this year together. We have been connecting with each other through Dreamleapers Inspiration for, I believe, 4 years now. Can you believe that? We started in the pandemic when everyone was at home and we all longed for a way to connect to each other. And many of us have continued to stay together each week to come together to pause, as the intro says, to pause, to reflect, to examine our lives and figure out our best way forward, and to have a refresh, a reset as we go from week to week, knowing that there are other people like us who value that jumpstart, who value that moment to realign ourselves with what matters the most. And alignment is really what it's all about. When we can align our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, we create peace in our lives, and it really, truly does work. And so as we begin this year, I ask all of us, what do we want? If you literally ask yourself that question, what do you want for yourself, for your life, as you walk into this new year? What would your answer be? You write it down for yourself. You can write it in the chat as well, but write it down for yourself. What do you want right now? There's one thing that you want for yourself right now. What might it be? Now, I took a poll talking to a number of people that I know as the year was transitioning from last year to this year. And one of the things that I heard a lot of people say, using different words here and there, is that they wanted a fresh start. I want to start fresh. I want to, be invigorated by the now and the next. A lot of young people talk about next level. What does next level mean to you as you move into the new year? What is it that you can do, want to do, long to do? And having a fresh start was something that came up, bubbled forth for a lot of different people. Well, what does that mean? How do you have a fresh start in your actual life that you're living right now? What might you do differently today, and differently and consistently today, that might benefit you? And why would you do it? I recently talked to a wonderful man, a coach, a former Marine. His name is Demise Perdue. He wrote an inspirational book called Elevation Requires Change. And one of the things that he shared that I think is worth sharing with you right now is, when people make New Year's resolutions, very often they don't stick. We have every good intention. I'm going to do this thing for myself. I'm promising that I'm going to do this thing. Often it's in the beginning of the year, it's about our physicality. I'm going to take care of my body better. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to move more. These are things that we hear often, and it may be on your list too. I certainly intend to move more. And Demise said, yeah, it's great to have those ideas. He says, but if you just have the the outcome, which is the weight loss or, the walking 5 miles a day or whatever the outcome is. He says, often we don't actually fulfill that outcome. Like, oh, why not? Why? Because we haven't answered the question of why. Why do you want to walk 5 miles a day? Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to get healthier? Why do you want to change your job? Why do you want to move to another space? Why? If you can answer why, then you get to the core of what gives you the motivation and the drive to do it. So, for example, and I've talked about a dear friend of mine who recently suffered a number of health setbacks. And he was told the first time, you need to lose weight. And so he says, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose weight. And he lost it, but then he gained it again. This time, after suffering a second setback, he said, you know, I'm going to lose weight because I want to live and I want to be happy and I want to have a fulfilled life. And in order to have those things, I have to get this weight off of my body because it's holding me back. Guess what? It's working this time because the motivation is not the 30 pounds or whatever the number is. The motivation is life. The motivation is healthfulness. The motivation is happiness. The motivation is the ability to move through space comfortably. Answering the why, Demaya said, is what can get us to taking the action that we've promised ourselves we want to take. So if we want a fresh start, that sounds good. It sounds really good. But what does it mean? And why do you want a fresh start? And what does a fresh start look like? What does a fresh start look like for you? I think you're going to make a list of here are the things that you like that you do, and here are the things that, not so much. I could get rid of those. I don't need to do those anymore. I don't need to have these people in my life. I don't need to have this, whatever the setback is. I don't need to have that anymore. And let me replace those things with free time, free space, better engagement with other people. Fresh start often is sweep away the things that don't work anymore, the things that don't matter for your well-being. How easy is that to do? Anything that requires change is not easy, but Demaya says elevation requires change, and we want to be elevated in our lives. We want to make the effort to improve, to have greater joy, greater peace, greater prosperity, greater potential. And in order to have those things, we have to make space for them. And we also have to learn. We have to learn from our mistakes and pay attention to, I'm not even going to just say mistakes, learn from our history, learn from our past. So I want to bring up the quote that I picked for today with the idea of claiming a fresh start for ourselves. There's something that I think we can think about as we're aligning ourselves with that. And this is from the Buddha, who says, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. No matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. Do you believe that? Do you believe that no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again? No matter what happens, if you wake up the next day, you can begin again? I want to know if you actually believe that. It sounds good. It sounds like it makes sense. But if you feel like there's so many burdens upon you, responsibilities, burden, debt, toxic relationships, unhealthy work environment, whatever the thing or things are that you feel are weighing you down, what are they? But those are the things from your past because they are things that happened already. They may be affecting you today, but The Buddha says no matter what happened in your past, you can start over again. So, how do you do that? How do you start over again? How do you get a fresh start when you've got baggage? I remember, I'm a writer first. And way before I was using a computer and storing all of my thoughts in tiny little files that you don't even see on a computer, I was writing them down. And during a couple of periods in my life, and you all may be able to relate to this, when I wasn't really happy, that was a prolific time. And think about it, songwriters, musicians, creative people often have tremendous spurts of creativity when they are not in the best frame of mind, when they're sad, when they're depressed, when they're down. So this was a down time for me. And I was writing all kinds of things and printing them. And I put all this stuff in a bag. And I was carrying the bag around. And I remember my sister, Stephanie, my younger sister, was visiting me. And I was walking around with this bag like what we now, this is way before this time, but the reusable grocery bags was big. It was a big bag filled with all these pieces of folded paper. And she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you carrying that stuff with you? What is in that bag?" And I would pull out a piece of paper and read her something and stuff it back in and pull out another one. And when I think about this in retrospect, I know she was probably worried sick about me. Why is my sister walking around with this bag of stuff? And why, when she's reading it to me, it's so emotional. I was not in a good place. And I was literally being what they called a bag lady, carrying this heavy bag of paper around and sorting through it at different points to read it. That was the therapy that I was giving myself, not a recommendation, by the way. And it came to a point, and I think Stephanie was helpful for me in having a pivot of realizing this is not healthy. I was absolutely actively living in the past. Memories, things that had occurred that I was processing through writing. We all have our ways of processing things. I'm not saying that writing things down is a bad process, but writing it down, printing it out, carrying it around, lugging it around, pulling it out and reading it and revisiting, reliving these experiences was absolutely not healthy. And I think Stephanie's perspective helped me to realize, put the bag down. That was the first step, put it down. Later, discard the papers in the bag, like thread them, rip them, burn them, get rid of them, let go of the weight of these things that were hurting my heart. I did that over time. And it reminds me of the Buddha's quote because I was stuck. I was absolutely stuck. And perhaps you've had times when you felt stuck in the past. Literally, I was just weighted down by these papers that were holding on to the thoughts of past experiences that had been extremely painful to me. What good was that doing? Nothing. It was keeping me in that space rather than in the space where I actually was. Like my physical location and everything that was around me and all that was going on in my world, I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to things that had happened in the past that hurt me. And what does the Buddha say? Let's pull that up. The Buddha says that rather than holding on to those things, the Buddha says no matter how hard the past, no matter how hard, no matter what has occurred, you can always begin again. No matter how hard the past. Now for me, for me, the things that I had been writing about were hard. There are things that impact your life, I'm sure, that you consider to be hard. Someone else may or may not agree with you. It doesn't matter. What has impacted your life that you consider to be difficult? Is it holding you down? Whatever that is it anchoring you in a place where you don't want to be? Is it making you feel like you cannot move forward? Anger can do that. Bitterness can do that. Resentment can do that. Fear, pain. What would you say is the hardest thing that happened to you in just this past year? What would that be? Write it down for yourself. What's the hardest thing that happened in your life? And let me ask another question. Is there anything right now that is holding you down? It could be a person, it could be a relationship, it could be an environment, it could be your work, it could be your community, a loved one, a neighbor, whatever it is. I say all those things because for everybody, it's something different. Is something holding you back? Is something weighing you down right now? And how can you tell? What do you spend your time thinking about? Is there a situation that's puzzling you, that's worrying you, that it's like when you had homework and you didn't do that biggest, hardest one because it was too big and too difficult. So it was always just kind of lingering over there, waiting for you to do something. Is there something like that in your life right now that's holding you back? If there is, identify it, acknowledge it, say, this is it. This is holding me back. This thing is so big, I can hardly even look at it. I don't want to accept that it's real, but it is. If it is, then what do you do with it? Face it. Face it and believe that no matter how difficult it may seem, a new day is ahead. You can start again. And starting again may be looking at it differently. How about if I approach this scenario differently? I remember, and this is something that happens to a lot of people at the holidays, and we've just had that, going home to be with family, and then some of those relationships from childhood seem to come back. And whereas I was a grown woman, suddenly I felt like I was 12 and reacting to people because they were treating me like I was 12. And I would get so mad and like, how dare they do this? And I'm not going to take this anymore. And on and on and on I would go. And then one day I realized, actually, I don't have to take this anymore. I don't have to. I'm not 12. I'm a grown woman. I can react differently to things that are happening in my world. Why? Because I'm grown. I'm an adult. I'm in charge of myself. I do not have to allow my emotions to take over and turn me into this fearful little thing who allows people to take advantage of me. Oh, imagine that. After I realized it, the light went off, then I had to start practicing it. Because it's one thing to realize it, and another completely to put it into action. And so I was like, oh, whoever you are, if you talk to me like this, I am not going to respond the way I used to. I can walk away. I can say, please stop. I can say, don't talk to me like that. I can respond with a joke, with a quip. I could do any number of things other than lose my power and give it away to somebody else. And when I started recognizing that, suddenly there was all this freedom around me because there was no more power that another had over my reaction. And it's a non-issue anymore. It used to be a huge issue. When you can free yourself of something that used to define you, it's an incredible experience. Start again. It's that fresh start. And it happened for me, so I'm sure it can happen for you. I have another example. I have my own business and have had for a long time. So rather than having a boss, I say I've had many bosses because each client is a boss. You have to take care of them and work with them and figure out how to make whatever the project is work favorably for everyone. So there's a client, great project, difficult leader, very difficult leader. And I found myself having a lot of triggering interactions with this person. Now, if I'm honest, and I have reflected on this a lot, I can admit that this particular person acted like other people that I remember from my childhood who were triggering, caustic, sharp, um, very little emotional intelligence, just sharp to the point, direct and rude. And it would hurt my feelings. As much as I was trying to do my best for this client, do the very best I could, the way that this person would talk to me was extremely harsh and not the kind of interaction that I appreciate. And I didn't feel that there was anything I could do. This is my client. What am I supposed to do? You may have a situation where it's your boss, it's your next door neighbor, it's your mother-in-law, whoever. It could be anyone. At first, I was enduring it and just being mad and, come home with feeling like steam was coming out of my ears. And then I realized, I can react differently. There is no reason for me to allow this person to have this much control over my thoughts, my emotions, and my ability to complete a task. And so I sat back, I meditated about it. I thought, how can I behave differently in this situation? Now, this is a client. I don't want to lose my client. I love the project. I want to figure out how I can do this project better so that it's better for me and for them. And what I did to help myself was to think about what my strengths were. What are you good at? Why are you doing this in the first place? What value does it have for you? Answering why. Why have I chosen to do this? And then why have I chosen to allow this person to interact with me in this way? The why I do it is because I really appreciate the project. The why I allowed the person to interact with me that way was based on some old stuff. And I worked on it a lot and was able to let that go. I don't deserve to be talked to in that way. I don't do my best work when someone speaks to me in this manner. When I realized that and internalized it, because of course you know it, but when I internalized it, I started speaking to the person differently. When the spiral began, before it went too far, I would say, just a moment, can we revisit some things? Because it's hard for me to hear what you're asking for the way it's going now. So can I reframe this? Or sometimes I think it would be great if we come back and talk about this later because I don't think we're reaching any good conclusions right now. And I want to make sure that I do my best work. So with strategy, it wasn't me cursing somebody out or just being rude or disrespectful. It was standing up for myself. It was recognizing that I deserve to be spoken to in a particular way and that I don't have to put up with it if it doesn't happen in that way. Fresh start. Literally having a fresh start in my mind and how I was going to work with this person changed everything. Now, I've heard people say this, you probably have too. When you change, other people change. When you change, other people change. And sometimes you feel like, well, why should I have to change? I'm not the one doing something wrong. That may or may not be true, but if you want something different to happen in your life, you have to be willing to do something different, right? You have to be willing to take that step. First, it is the self-assessment step. What am I doing that is working? What am I doing that is not working? And if I'm doing something that's not working and I can identify what it is, how can I stop doing that? It is not easy to change your behavior, but in order to possibly change it, you have to understand what needs to change and why. Answering that why again. Why do I need to do this differently? Oh, because what's happening now isn't serving me. Because the way that I've been reacting to, or uh, it's often a reaction as opposed to you being the perpetrator, it's often a reaction. But the way that I'm reacting isn't yielding the results that I want. So I need to do something different. Okay, what could that be? And if you think it through all the way to the end. If I play this all the way out, what end result would be best and why? And then you work toward that goal. And when you work toward that goal, then you realize that you are no longer bound, shackled by the past. So let's look at the Buddha's words one more time, because this is so important. You do not have to be stuck in the past. You really and truly don't. The Buddha says no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. No matter how hard, you can always begin again. That means how many of us have lost loved ones in the past few months, certainly in the past year? Devastating losses, people who held our hearts, whose hearts we held, who are gone, who have lost a job and are suffering because of the struggle to have enough income in order to take care of yourself, who have lost homes, who have lost relationships, marriages, friendships. Loss is real. Loss can be difficult. Loss can be devastating. Hardship is real. And most of us, every single person has hardship before you leave the planet, but most of us have hardship right now. Understand that it doesn't have to govern you. It doesn't have to rule you. It doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to shackle you. You are greater than whatever hardships are occurring in your life right now. When you own up to who you are, what you believe, what your actions have been, and you commit to having a fresh start, being the very best that you can be in this present moment, there's freedom in that. There's freedom in owning your life, admitting your mistakes, and putting your stake in the ground and saying, here's how I'm going to be moving forward. Here's how I intend to live. Here's how I intend to treat other people. Here's how I intend to flourish. So the fresh start that you can make right now as we begin this year is in deciding, how do you want to live? Who do you want to be? How do you want to interact with others? How do you want to live your life? You can decide now, and no matter what hardship is behind you, you can live like that. Easy? No. So what? Real? Yes. You are in charge of your life. You get to make the decision as to what you do from this point forward. You do need to recognize you have a past, and you have the opportunity to not be bound by it. By the way, that doesn't mean that you just recklessly walk away from whatever responsibilities you have, but it means that you don't have to be frozen by them. You can be free even as you are responsible. You can be happy and have contentment even if you have a lot of work to do. It is in your power, the life that you are going to live right now. So choose to make a fresh start. Every day you wake up, you can refresh that fresh start. Don't allow yourself to be burdened by hardship. Be invigorated by what is before you and make conscious choices every day to live what you have promised yourself your life will be. Why? Because you deserve it. Thank you for joining me at the beginning of this new year. May the year be filled with joy, prosperity, peace, and love. Until next time, have a great day and make it count. Namaste.